For more than 20 years, Joel Osteen was the most beloved pastor in America. 45,000 people in his church every week, best-selling books stacked at the front of every store, and a smile that seemed to promise everything would work out fine.
On a Sunday morning in 2024, Joel Osteen walked onto the stage at Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. The same stage he has walked onto hundreds of times before, the same smile, the same confidence, the same message.
For years, people came to Lakewood Church believing their lives would change. They gave faithfully, they volunteered, they trusted the message. Many believed that if they stayed positive, kept the faith, and never stopped giving, breakthrough would eventually come. But today, thousands of those same people are no longer sitting in the pews. Some have left quietly, some have left hurt, and some say they may never return to a megachurch again. So what caused so many devoted members to walk away from one of the most successful ministries in modern history? Because former members, old controversies, and a growing wave of disillusionment may reveal a story far more troubling than anyone expected. See this with your own eyes. Drop where you're watching from below, and stick around with us. There's a lot more coming that you won't want to miss. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's continue. To understand why so many people may be leaving Lakewood Church, you first have to understand what they believed they had found. Because Lakewood wasn't just another church, it was a phenomenon. When Joel Osteen stepped into leadership after the death of his father, John Osteen, in 1999, few expected what would happen next. At the time, Lakewood had around 6,000 members. It was already successful, but under Joel, growth exploded. Within just a few years, attendance had surged into the tens of thousands.
But what if the biggest challenge facing Lakewood Church isn't a scandal? What if it's something hiding in plain sight? Because when people talk about why some members may have walked away from Lakewood Church, one reason keeps surfacing over and over again. Not financial controversy, not a moral failure, not even one defining event. Instead, many point to something called celebrity pastor culture. Now, let me be absolutely clear before we go any further. Lakewood Church has never officially said members left because of this. There isn't a church report that lists celebrity culture as the reason people stopped attending. But if you spend time reading public testimonies from former attendees, watching interviews, following online discussions, and listening to the wider conversations surrounding megachurches, you'll notice this question refuses to go away. Has Lakewood Church become known more for one man than for the church itself? Think about that for just a second. When someone says Lakewood Church, who immediately comes to mind? Joel Osteen. Not the worship ministry, not the missions department, not the volunteers, not the community outreach. Joel Osteen. And honestly, that's not surprising. He's one of the most recognized pastors on earth. His sermons are broadcast across continents. His books have sold millions of copies. His face appears on television screens every single week. His videos rack up millions of views online. His conferences attract thousands. His name has become recognizable even to people who've never stepped foot inside a church. But that's not always a positive thing.
That's influence, massive influence. And for many Christians, that's something to celebrate. They believe God has simply given Joel Osteen an extraordinary platform to reach people that traditional churches could never reach. But here's where the conversation changes. When does influence become celebrity? And once that line is crossed, can the church itself begin disappearing behind the personality leading it? That's the concern some former attendees have raised. Walk into Lakewood Church, and there's no denying it's an impressive experience. The lights, the giant LED screens, the television cameras, the polished production, the perfectly timed music, the massive stage,
everything is executed with excellence. It feels less like a small neighborhood church and more like a global broadcast. Now, for many people, that's exactly why they love it. They see professionalism. They see excellence. They see a ministry using every available tool to spread the gospel. But others see something completely different. Some former attendees have said they slowly began feeling like they weren't participating in a church family anymore. They felt like they were sitting in the audience of a television production. Week after week, they watched the message, they applauded, then they went home. And somewhere along the way, they started asking themselves, do people know me here? Am I growing here? Or am I simply watching one of the world's biggest Christian broadcasts in person? Those are difficult questions. Across America, researchers say more Christians are leaving massive congregations in search of something different, not necessarily better, just different. Smaller churches, closer relationships, pastors who know their names, communities where serving matters just as much as sitting, where discipleship happens throughout the week, not just from a stage on Sunday morning. And that's where Lakewood often becomes the center of the conversation, because very few churches have built a platform as influential as this one. But here's another question. Has that platform become so successful that the pastor has become the brand? Think about it. When Joel Osteen releases a new book, it's national news. When he gives an interview, millions watch. When people debate Lakewood, how often are they actually discussing the church's ministries compared to discussing Joel Osteen himself? For some former members, that's exactly what began to trouble them. They felt conversations increasingly revolved around Joel, his personality, his motivational style, his public image, rather than the local church community they once joined. Again, that doesn't mean Lakewood Church intentionally created that culture, and it certainly doesn't prove this is why everyone who left decided to leave. But it's a perception that has surfaced again and again among some former attendees. Supporters see it very differently. They argued that every successful ministry has a visible leader. Billy Graham had one. Charles Stanley had one. Rick Warren had one. Joel Osteen is simply the face of a ministry that reaches millions. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's a fair argument. But critics respond with one final question. Should the most recognizable thing about a church be its pastor, or should it be its people? Because when visitors remember the personality, but struggle to remember the community, some believe that's the moment a church begins looking less like a family and more like a brand. Now, does this prove celebrity pastor culture caused people to leave Lakewood Church? No. There's no evidence establishing it as the single cause. But when you combine the public testimonies of some former attendees, the broader shift away from megachurches, and the growing national conversation about celebrity Christianity, it's easy to see why many people believe this became one piece of a much bigger puzzle. And maybe, just maybe, the empty seats people are talking about today didn't appear overnight. Perhaps they were the result of questions that had been quietly growing for years. Questions about identity, questions about community, and one question that still echoes today. When people come to Lakewood Church, are they coming for the church or for Joel Osteen? I leave you to answer that. And one of the hidden reasons some people may be leaving Lakewood Church could be megachurch fatigue. Yeah, you heard me right. According to trusted sources, as I looked into why some former attendees say they left, not just from Lakewood, but from other megachurches as well, I kept seeing the same phrase come up again and again: megachurch fatigue. Now, what does that actually mean? Imagine walking into Lakewood Church for the very first time. The massive auditorium, the incredible worship, the giant LED screens, the professional production, thousands of people gathered under one roof. It's breathtaking. For many people, it's unlike anything they've ever experienced. And honestly, that's part of what makes Lakewood so special. There's no denying that Joel Osteen and Lakewood Church have built one of the most influential ministries in the world. Every week, millions watch online, while thousands gather in Houston. It's a church that has inspired people across the globe. But here's the question. What happens after the excitement wears off? What happens when you've attended for a year or 5 years? When the stage no longer surprises you? When the production becomes familiar? What keeps you coming back? For many Christians, the answer isn't just the sermon. It's the relationships. Because church has never been meant to be just a place you attend. It's meant to be a place where you're known. A place where someone notices when you're missing. A place where people pray for you, encourage you, and walk through life's challenges with you. But in a church with tens of thousands of attendees, that can become much harder. Some former attendees have publicly shared that while they appreciated the quality of the services, they often struggled to feel personally connected. Not because the church didn't care, but simply because it's difficult to build close relationships in such a large environment. Think about it. If 30,000 people attend in a weekend, how likely is it that your pastor will know your name? How likely is it that someone notices if you quietly stop showing up? For some people, that's where the struggle begins. Week after week, they attend, they worship, they listen. Then they walk back to their car wondering, if I didn't come next Sunday, would anyone even know? That's a difficult question because while a megachurch can create an incredible worship experience, it can also make some people feel invisible. Ironically, the larger the crowd becomes, the easier it is to disappear inside it. And that's why many Christians today are moving in the opposite direction. They're choosing smaller churches, not because they dislike Lakewood, not because they've lost respect for Joel Osteen, but because they're looking for something different. They're looking for closer friendships, greater accountability, easier access to pastors, a community where they don't just attend church, they belong to one. Now, does this prove that megachurch fatigue is the reason people left Lakewood Church? No, there was no official evidence showing it caused a mass departure, but it is one of the most commonly discussed reasons former attendees of large churches, including some who have spoken publicly about Lakewood, say they eventually looked elsewhere. And maybe that's the bigger story. Maybe the conversation isn't really about empty seats. Maybe it's about empty connections. Because at the end of the day, people don't just want a powerful message. They want meaningful relationships. They don't just want to hear a pastor every Sunday. They want to know that someone will notice when they're gone. And perhaps that's the question Lakewood Church and many other megachurches continue to wrestle with today. Can a church keep growing bigger while still making every person feel known? Because for some former members, the answer to that question may have determined whether they stayed or quietly walked away.
So, what do you think? Did people really leave Lakewood Church because of Joel Osteen? Or is the story far more complicated than the headlines want us to believe? After looking at the evidence, one thing becomes clear. There's no single event, no official report, and no confirmed mass exodus that explains everything. Instead, we find a combination of changing church culture, shifting expectations, and honest questions about community, leadership, and what people truly want from a church. Maybe the real story isn't about empty seats. Maybe it's about people searching for a place where they feel seen, known, and spiritually connected. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe megachurches like Lakewood can continue to grow while maintaining genuine community? Or do you think many Christians are returning to smaller churches for a reason? Share your thoughts in the comments below, but let's keep the conversation respectful and centered on truth. If you enjoyed this deep investigation and want more fact-based reports on the stories shaping the Christian world, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Faith in View, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next investigation. Because this story may be ending, but the conversation about the future of the church is only just beginning.
Until next time, stay informed, stay discerning, and above all, stay faithful.